Hello and welcome to Channels Book Club. My name is Olakunle Kasumu, and it's great to be on the show. Thank you for all the wonderful messages coming in, wishing us a happy 10-year anniversary on this show. It's been 10 exciting years of talking books on Channels Book Club, talking to writers, authors, publishers, policymakers, and book lovers generally. In 10 years, it has been quite a ride. This is the political season in Nigeria, and everybody is talking politics. The whole country is abuzz with politics. So we thought of going back in time, because this is a season when we're going back in time on this show, to remember a few conversations we've had with politicians and Nigerians generally on matters of politics and governance and nation building. And it was quite interesting, particularly for me, just digging into the archives and watching some of those old videos again, laughing at myself, of course. My looks have changed a lot over the years. My looks and the way I talk and the way I ask questions have evolved over the years. You learn a lot in 10 years, don't you? And you do change a lot in 10 years. But it's been fun looking back, not just fun, but also thought-provoking, looking back at some of those conversations we had over time. Politicians are complex, are they not? They are complex, very complex. Beware of drawing conclusions based on only the things you see on the pages of newspapers and you watch on TV. Politicians have a knack of just showing you what they want you to see. That's one of the things you need to keep in mind at this time. I've seen friends and families becoming enemies because of Nigerian politics. Usually not worth it, okay? Not worth it. But let's go back a little bit in time. Now, there's this gentleman whom some will describe very much as a controversial politician. But one thing about him, though, is you never sit on the fence when it comes to the governor of Kaduna State, Governor El-Rufai. Well, you either like him or you don't like him at all. Usually you don't have a neutral position with him. Maybe because he's very blunt, very direct, and he speaks his mind on almost all issues. And most of the things he says are very pointed. Well, we spoke to him about 9 years ago on the show. This show had just started when we spoke to him, when we interviewed him on the show. He had just released his book then, titled The Accidental Public Servant, one of the most controversial books in the last 50 years ever written in Nigeria, in my humble opinion. Another book that probably will fall into that category will be There Was a Country by Chinua Achebe, and My Watch by former President Olusegun Obasanjo. These are books that generated so many conversations and discussions and debates and arguments and counter write-ups and books even in some instances. The Accidental Public Servant is one of such books. And when it first came out, if I could cast your mind back, generated so much heat. Everybody was talking and writing about the Accidental Public Servant. Well, he gave us some insight when we spoke to him about the presidency. What does it mean to be president? Then we were asking him, do you plan to become president of Nigeria? He wrote in his book that he didn't plan to. He said he didn't plan to. But a lot of people believe that he wanted to be president of Nigeria. Well, many years down the line, he's still not president of Nigeria. Neither has he declared his intention to run as president of Nigeria one day. But the speculations are still there. But he had this to say back then. Were you ever interested in running for the office of the president? Are you interested in running for the office of the president? This is another issue some critics have raised, because in the book you expressed that you were never interested. And they say you were. What actually happened?
You know, maybe because in the last few years we have depreciated the office of the president to a point that anybody thinks he can be president. But I think running for president is very big deal. I think that many people do not appreciate the burden and the weight of the office of the president. They only see the convoys and the private jet and German medical care as presidency. Presidency is more than that. I have been privileged at a relatively young age to work with two presidents, General Abdulsalami Abubakar and President Obasanjo. And I know how difficult that job is. And I would not wish it on my enemy. Certainly, I would not wish it on me. If circumstances force you to do it, yeah, sure, you do it. But it's not something that anyone would want to go out of his way to look for or spend money for if you really want to do the job. Because the post-Jonathanian Nigeria will be a very messy place. And whoever is going to inherit this grand mess is going to have to work 23 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to lift Nigeria out of the morass we have found ourselves in. So I honestly don't find the prospects of being president very attractive, unlike what most people think.
Interesting, right? Now, this is the direction we're taking the show today, getting some insights into how politicians think and how politics, what politics is all about in Nigeria. Very, very insightful. Now, we asked him a question, and he said something interesting. Listen to this. Why did you choose to write your book in such a revealing way?
I really felt strongly that governance in Nigeria has become a sort of conspiracy of silence, in which people go into government, go through experiences, both good and bad, both youthful and useless, and come out and keep quiet because they want to be invited back again. I have no desire to be invited back again, so I felt I was in a position to be very frank about my own experiences and my own opinions of events as well as people and processes. So that's what I did. It was a very difficult decision to take, but I felt that the country needed to have some insider glimpse into how we run our affairs and what we can do to improve it. In addition, I also wanted young people to understand that we're all human. Even though many would consider us to be successes while we were in government, a few of us that served under Obasanjo, we were human. We had foibles, we had weaknesses like everyone else, and there is nothing stopping any one of them to be as good or even better. And I hope that that goal has been achieved.
Did you get that? Government has become a conspiracy of silence. Government has become a conspiracy of silence. Well, if President Buhari is listening to me, please write a book when you leave office. A lot of our government leaders don't tell their story. They don't tell their story. And we are left with so many insinuations and assumptions, and, nobody really knows what goes on in government. There's so much secrecy around government in Nigeria, and this has to stop. If we want to build real democracy, then the Nigerian people have to have access to true and adequate information at the highest levels of government. Well, that was Governor El-Rufai back then, before he became governor. And you can see, if you compare that picture with the way he looks these days, you see it's very different. And the way I looked then, of course, and the way I look now, very different. So, well, after then, we interviewed quite a number of people. But one interview, this is not too long ago, about 3 years ago, we had an interview with Professor Utomi, and he provided incredible insight into what happens in politics in Nigeria. Remember, he was trying to run for the office of governor of Delta State, and you know the story. He never made it. Some will argue that, he wasn't that popular, and so on. Some other people will tell you otherwise. But certain types of people don't seem to get into power in Nigeria for some reasons. I'll leave that to you. But In his book titled Why Not?, Professor Utomi poured his heart out about that experience when he tried to run for office of governor in Delta State. He felt bitter and he felt cheated. And he wrote a lot of things like that in his book, Why Not? And we asked him about that particular experience. And he provided insights into what some people would describe as the selection rather than election process in Nigeria. Does that really happen? Have we been a country where people have been selected into office rather than elected? Well, we know what is the official position, but some of these politicians tell us what they experience behind the official, behind the obvious. I will put it that way. So let's listen to Professor Utomi then. You were really let down, weren't you?
No, I was very, very let down. Very, very let down. Because you see, my engagement in public life in Nigeria has been driven by a very simple thing. Can we find partners to advance the common good? And I crossed every barrier. There's some things that are not in this that probably will come out in the follow-up volume. I can tell you, I went somewhere and a famous journalist, general manager at NTA, said to me, how come you are friends with such people? Everything we are supposed to believe about you should lead us not to expect you to be friendly with such people.
Almost like a contradiction.
Yes, you know, but I have lived deliberately with that apparent contradiction because I have always recognized that to make omelets, you have to break some eggs. And that you look at people and take what is strong about them and work with that thing that is strong in them to advance the good of all. I deliberately did it and live with the consequence of other kinds of perception if that good could be achieved. Now, to have made that kind of strenuous effort continuously and to have built what you thought was a certain degree of friendship that you believe that the least that they could do, and was not asking anything extraordinary of them, is to be honest with you. And to see that unravel so much, especially when they're telling you something else consistently, was enormously disappointing for my sense of human nature. Not so much politics, but I mean, is man this bad? Because in all my dealings, I believe first and foremost that man was made good. He can turn one way or the other, but God created man good. The reason we have conscience is because God wanted for all of us to be able to tell good and evil. We can then make a choice to leave what that conscience is saying to us is good and do something, but at least it's in us to know that this is not right.
Yeah.
No, having taken all of that into account and dealing with people and dealing with them in a way that consistently all you've done is give. You've never asked. I mean, let's take the example of Lagos. I met Asiwaju Bola Tinubu in 1998. I mean, he was the one who walked up to me and introduced himself and all of that, and talked about my work with what became NADECO and how they abroad, you know, relied a lot on my view of things to take a bearing. And when he ran and won, I gave completely of my time and everything. In fact, he gave me the name citizen because I would refuse to get paid for what people would take millions for, because it's my citizen's duty. And it became like a joke. And so, not to be able to expect that you can get at least some basic feedback that is honest was enormously disappointing, not for politics, but for the nature of man.
what you wrote in here is, correct me if I'm wrong, what you wrote in here is that the governorship ticket for the APC during the 2018 primaries had already been sort of like given to somebody.
Apparently.
Apparently.
It was clear.
But none of them told you.
Yes, if they could have just told me
and you
something.
You kept spending money. And
none of them contributed one kobo. That's the amazing thing about it. None of them contributed one kobo.
That's the crux of the matter for you.
That they couldn't say, don't waste your time. Or, we don't intend to have a primary. They would not say it that way, of course. They normally don't. But find some nice way of preventing me from spending this money. In fact, they kept inviting me to meetings. And each meeting meant travel money. So at the point, as I said in the book, I said, was this a deliberate ploy to bankrupt me? Because it didn't make any sense. You're supposed to be my friend. You've fixed something else. Why are you making me come to these meetings every 48 hours or whatever you call one to look at this Delta thing? People kept saying to me, look, Omwagige and Co. tell us this thing, they fixed this thing, don't worry. I said, no. Then we'll come to the meeting, and Adam Soshomole will praise me as the only person who has behaved like a
true Democrat.
It was incredible.
Is that the way it plays out in Nigerian politics? It wasn't just about you or Delta States.
Probably wasn't about me.
Across board.
Yes, that's what I found out, was that treachery is a way of life in what they call politics in Nigeria. But you see, what worries me, and I don't think they quite realize it, it might seem like a nice game. So, okay, they've ended up with this, is that the legitimacy of the political process is every day depreciated by these kinds of games.
Thought-provoking. Let's hope that we have moved away from selecting leaders, governors, and presidents into real election. Well, officially we'll be told that we have elections, but you hear some of these things and you wonder what really happens, in those rooms where we are not. But we need to get serious as a country and get very real. We need to get out of all the problems that we have right now and start moving along the path of true greatness in line with our potential. Okay, now, we also interviewed Senator Abaribe, and in line with what Professor Utomi said, he provided some insights into the way politicians think. Politicians never have permanent friends. They never have permanent enemies, he said. It's we, those who support the politicians, that turn ourselves into permanent enemies because of these politicians who never have permanent friends and never have permanent enemies. Isn't that troubling? Well, let's listen to what he had to say. He provides us with some insights into the world of politics in Nigeria and how politicians tend to think. Enjoy.
What happened to Pat Utomi happened to me. They told me that there was a primaries going to happen somewhere. I went there was nobody. I didn't know it would happen somewhere else. And, But I learned lessons, useful lessons. And I think that some of those lessons are also put in here, which is...
That is in chapter, in chapter 6.
It was in chapter 6, yes, I put in some lessons. When you go in, never expect success.
Lesson 1.
That's lesson 1.
When you go in,
never expect success immediately. Don't look at yourself as, oh, I'm much bigger than everybody. The next lesson, of course, humility. You need to be humble. Never mind what people say. Politicians are actually the best set of people in this world. And I will tell you why. I'll tell you why. Most politicians don't carry things to heart. You can have a political fight with somebody. You can have so much difficulty. But tomorrow, you find yourself on the same plane.
I saw that.
I saw that.
You wrote something like that here, that something about not having permanent enemies or something like that? I forgot the exact words.
You really can't, because you don't really know where you're going to meet the person tomorrow. If you look today and see all the people who are in one section and the people who are in the other section, you'll find really that it's a mix. And I also put one lesson inside there. One of my mentors, Dr. Gashon Amuta, said, you cannot mold human beings, new ones. It's the same set of people that you're going to always have to deal with, you know.
Yeah, I mean, your book shows clearly that to be successful in politics, you have to be very skilled in handling people. You must have a keen understanding of human nature.
Precisely. You need to really know human beings. And I can tell you that one of the things that strikes those who go into politics early is that they do not understand how low people can go in politics.
Are you following this? This is getting into the minds of politicians. What you see is not always what you get. Remember that as you prepare for elections in the next few weeks. Well, General Olusegun Obasanjo, former President Olusegun Obasanjo, we had a conversation with him some years back. And he said something different from what you've had, but very, very much in line. How he enjoyed people using his looks to judge him. It was a bit funny. But he said people look at him and sort of underestimate him. So politicians like that, some politicians enjoy that a lot, when you underestimate them, when you think that they think in a particular way, but they're going in a different direction. The average Nigerian politician tends to be like that, isn't it? Well, maybe I'm wrong, but it's an observation I've made. But the former president, almost jokingly, explained that about himself, describing his looks and the way people tend to judge him based on his looks. Enjoy this. Let me read something interesting in volume 2, page 24, where you said, a number of things had always helped my learning process. God has been kind to me in giving me a quick brain, that is, intellectual endowment. Some people look bright and smart. God concealed mine.
Well, I think what you call the veiled aspect of me, I think people see me for what I am, facially, superficially. And the truth is this, even when I look at myself in the mirror, I don't look bright. And I know I don't. So, when people see me that way, they underrate me. They underestimate me. So I've come to enjoy being underrated, being underestimated, because it allows me to spring surprise. You know, when you look at me and you say, well, look at him. He's no better than a village farmer. Well, of course, I'm a farmer, and I come from a village. But I don't make effort to say, well, look, I want to look stupid or appear stupid. But if you see me as probably not looking bright, and you try me, maybe you will succeed.
Well, time is never a friend on this show. There's so much more we've had. We're going to bring out from the past as we prepare for the elections in the next few weeks. This is the political season, like I said at the beginning, and we're trying to align with that while we take you down memory lane as we celebrate 10 years of talking books on Channel's Book Club. Keep those messages coming. Keep those tweets coming, those messages on Instagram and Facebook. We absolutely love them. We're delighted. Most of them have been very, very encouraging. And maybe we'll read a few out on the next episode. But please keep them coming. Our handles are displayed on the screen, so you can always tweet to us, send us something on Instagram or Facebook. Well, this is where we have to end the show today. As always, we'll be very delighted to hear from you. My name is Olakunle Kasumo. Remember, one great book can change your life. Bye-bye.